mantras of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says the supreme is divine knowledge and perfect unity. At each moment of the day, let us call to Him so that we may be nothing else than Himself. With my love and blessings, says our Divine Mother. Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo from the collective works of our Lord Sri Aurobindo book Letters on Yoga volume 4 from the collective works of volume 31. Topic Ego and its forms. Subtopic Getting rid of the ego altogether. Page 236. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, but what is this ego of which you speak? Everybody has the ego, and it is impossible to get rid of it altogether except by two things: the opening of the psychic within and the descent of a wider ego-free consciousness from above. The psychic being opening does not get rid of the ego at once, but purifies it and offers it and all moments to the divine, so that one becomes unegoistic through self-giving and surrender. At the same time, the nature opens above and wider, ego-free consciousness comes down and ego disappears, and by the power of the psychic, your own true being, which is a portion of the Divine Mother. This is what has to happen. But it cannot happen in so short a time. Do not be always thinking of the vital moments and the ego. You have seen them and know that they are. It is enough. Concentrate rather in the heart on the opening there. Concentrate persistently and aspire persistently, and do not mind if it takes time. Call in anyway, even if you cannot call yet deeply, then the deeper call will come. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is possible to diminish the ego by the action of the force. If your consciousness associates itself with the action, then at least one can get rid of its major action and leave only minor traces. To get rid of the ego altogether, however, comes usually only by the descent of the consciousness from above and its occupation of the whole being, aided, of course, by the rule of the psychic in nature. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, I think you still give an exaggerated importance and attention to the ego and other elements that are interwoven in the nature of humanity and cannot be entirely got rid of, except by the coming of a new consciousness which replaces them by higher moments. If one rejects centrally with all sincerity the ego and the rajas, their roots gets loosened and sattva can prevail in the nature. But the expulsion of all ego and rajas cannot be done by the will and its effort. After a certain stage of preparation, therefore, one must stress more on the positive side of the sadhana than on the negative side of rejection, though this of course must remain to help the other. Still, what is important is to develop the psychic within and bring down the higher consciousness from above. The psychic, as it grows and manifests, detects immediately all wrong moments or elements, and at the same time supplies almost automatically the true element or moment which will replace them. This psychic process is much easier and more effective than that of a severe tapasya of purification. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the higher consciousness in descending brings peace and purity into all the inner parts. The inner being separates itself from the imperfect outer consciousness, and at the same time, the peace that comes carries in it a power which can throw out what contradicts the peace and purity. Ego can then slowly or swiftly but surely disappears. Rajas and Tamas change into their divine substitutes. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is rather a wider than a higher consciousness that is necessary for the liberation from the ego. Going higher up is necessary, of course, but by itself is not sufficient. Without persistent rejection from the moments of the ego, it cannot be done. Going up into the self liberates the higher parts, but the ego remains in the lower parts. The most effective force for this liberation is the psychic control, along with a steady rejection. The sense of ego can disappear into that of the self or the Purusha, but that of itself does not bring about the disappearance of the old ego reactions in the Prakriti. The Purusha has to get rid of these by a process of constant rejection and remolding. The remolding consists in throwing everything into a consecration to the Divine Mother and doing all for her without regard to oneself, one's desires, opinions, vital reactions, as if they were things to be fulfilled. This is most easily done if the psychic being becomes quite awake. Without the liberation of the psychic and the realization of the true self, the ego cannot go. Both are necessary. If there is no consciousness of the self, how can the ego disappear? The psychic can be liberated by love and devotion, but I was speaking of a case in which it is not so liberated and the realization of the self seems more easy, a case like yours. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo talks about human relations and spiritual life in page 309. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the first thing you have to do is to make up your mind what you want. If you want to have a free mind and vital to pursue your sadhana, you must get rid of attachment from the past and from relations. If you once do so entirely, you can either mix with anyone without any reaction or inconvenience. Till then, the impulse of seeing and recoiling carries it too much to the old relationship. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, for a sadhak, a suitable partner does not exist. A partner is only between him and the divine. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, in page 310, the first question was about a complementary soul and marriage. The answer is easy to give. The way of the spiritual life lies for you in one direction, and marriage lies in quite another and opposite. All talk about complementary soul is a camouflage which the mind tries to cover the sentimental, sensational, and physical wants of the lower vital nature. It is that vital nature in you which puts the question and would like an answer, reconciling its desires and demands with the call of the true soul in you. But it must not expect a sanction from any such incongruous reconciliation from here. The way of the supramental yoga is clear. It lies not through any concession to these things, through satisfaction under a spiritual cover, if possible, of its craving for the comforts and gratifications of domestic and conjugal life and enjoyment of ordinary emotional desire and physical passions, but through purification and transformation of the forces which these moments pervert and misuse. Not these human and animal demands, but the divine Ananda which is above and beyond them, which the indulgence of these degraded forms would prevent from descending, is a great thing that the aspiration of the vital being must demand in the sadhaka. Loneliness. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo talks about loneliness and says the inner loneliness can only be cured by the inner experience of union with the divine. No human association can fill the void. In the same way, for the spiritual life, the harmony with others must be founded not on mental and vital affinities, but on the divine consciousness and the union with the divine. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, when one finds the divine and finds others in the divine, then the real harmony comes. Meanwhile, what there can be is the goodwill and unity founded on the feeling of a common divine goal and the sense of all being all children of the Mother. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says to be alone with the divine is the highest of all the privileged states for the sadhak, for it is that in which inwardly he comes nearest to the divine and can make all existence a communion in the chamber of the heart as well as in the temple of the universe. Moreover, that is the beginning and base of the real oneness with all, for it establishes that oneness in its true base on the divine, for it is in the divine that he meets and unites with all, and no longer in a precarious interchange of the mental and vital ego. So do not fear loneliness, but put your trust in the Divine Mother and go forward on the path in her strength and grace, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Regarding interactions with others and the practice of integral yoga, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says in page 312, there are two attitudes that the sadhak can have, either a quiet equality to all, regardless of their friendliness or hostility, or a general goodwill. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, I would ask you not to let resentment or anything else rise or dictate your conduct. Put these things aside and see that peace within and the seeking of the divine are the one thing important. These clashes being only spurts of the ego. Turn yourself in one direction, but for the rest, keep a quiet goodwill to all. Regarding indifference to others, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, indifference to what others think or say, it is not what others think of you that matters, but what you are yourself. When you're doing sadhana, you have not to care what others want or think or say, but only for what is right and what the divine wants of you. It is no use listening to what people say or to the suggestions. Both are things by which one must learn not to be affected. A clear samatha in these matters is needed in order to get the true poise. The one thing that matters is the realization of the divine. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, so long as you go on listening to what people say, or listening to your own wrong imaginations, or insisting on your desires, how do you hope to get peace? Nobody ever got peace in that way. To become entirely indifferent to the good and bad opinions of others, especially those who are very near, and stand on the truth alone, is very difficult. Some reaction of the old nature can easily come across, but if one remains calm and firm within, these surface reactions quickly disappear, and their rejection helps the remnants of the old nature to disappear. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says, if you look closely, you will see that these things, the rudeness of one, the anger of another, are exceedingly slight things which should be received with no indifference. Do not allow them to trouble you so much. The one thing of supreme importance is your sadhana and your spiritual growth. Let nothing touch or disturb you. There is quietness and happiness which you can find by living in yourself in contact with the divine, which you will never get from outside. As for being kind, there is nothing harmful in kindness itself, but there is no reason why you should allow another to invade you with things you don't want to feel or hear. There is a measure in all things. Besides, one should keep oneself inwardly free and not admit that the vital moments of others should be a cause of difficulties. One has enough to do combating one's own. Such reproaches, the stone, etc., are quite usual from those who do not understand against the sadhak when he remains firm in his path against the ordinary human vital demands upon him. But that should not perturb you. It is better to be a stone on the road to the divine than soft and weak and clay in the muddy paths of the ordinary vital human nature, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Regarding overcoming attachments in page 316, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, all attachments is an hindrance to the sadhana. Goodwill you should have for all, psychic kindness for all, but no vital attachment. When one deals with people, they can be always a projection of consciousness to them or a reception of them into the consciousness, but that does not amount to an attachment. Something more is needed, a grip of the vital on the person or a grip of the person on one's vital, etc. Regarding concern for others in page 320, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, whatever or whomever you have handed over to the divine, you should not be any longer attached or anxious about him or it, but leave all that to the divine to do for the best. About sympathy for others, our Lord says it is dangerous to sympathize with someone who has gone wrong because it puts one in touch with the adverse force that upsets him, and that force at once tries to touch you and make its suggestions and contaminate by a sort of infection. About working with others, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says in page 322, work is always best done in silence except so far as it is necessary to speak for the work itself. Conversation is the best kept for leisure hours, so nobody should object to your silence during work. For the rest, what you should do is to keep the right attitude towards the others, not allow yourself to be upset, irritated, or displeased by anything they may say or do. In other words, keep the samatha and the universal goodwill proper to the sadhak as a sadhaka of this integral yoga. If you do that, and still others get upset or displeased, you must not mind, as you will not be responsible for their wrong reaction. Our Lord says to be sensitive, too sensitive and upset by any contact is excessive. But to have too many contacts and be always dispersing oneself prevents the sadhana from growing and solidifying in the inner being, since one is always being pulled out into the ordinary outer consciousness. Aloofness is very necessary at certain stages of sadhana, but it cannot be maintained all through. One must be able to mix with others and act. It is right to mix a little with others, it helps you to keep the balance. But to be able to remain back while conversing with others entirely over superficially without being involved is really the first step towards the secret of mixing with others without lowering the inner consciousness, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Regarding vital interchange, our Lord says if someone throws something on you, you should throw it away and not keep it. It is like mud thrown on the body. Immediately one needs to wash it off. And the consciousness of other things, such as the forces that comes from outside, is intended for knowledge, a psycho-occult knowledge necessary for the fullness of the consciousness. It is not intended that what is felt should never be allowed to become an influence, whether good or bad. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says a human vital interchange cannot be a true support for the sadhana, as it is on the contrary sure to impair and distort it, leading to a self-deception in the consciousness, a wrong turn of the emotional being and vital nature. Talking or thinking about others, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, talking about somebody may very well have an impact or effect on him. It does often, for it can be an effective formation of a thought or a feeling which, so embodied, will reach him. But I don't suppose mere mechanical thoughts or ill-formed imaginations would do that. But at any rate, it must be rare and need exceptional conditions or a play of forces in which a trifle counts. And our Lord says to silence the mind, it's not enough to throw back from the thought as it comes. It can only be an subordinate moment. One must get back from all thought and be separate from it, a silent consciousness observing the thoughts as if they come, but not oneself thinking or identified with the thoughts. Thoughts must be felt as outside things altogether. It is then easier to reject the thoughts or let them pass without disturbing the quietude of the mind. Not to be disturbed by either joy or grief, pleasure or displeasure, by what people say or do, or by any outward things, is called in yoga a state of samatha, equality to all things. It is of immense importance in sadhana to be able to reach this state. It helps the mental quietude and silence as well as the vital to come. It means indeed that the vital itself and the vital mind are already falling silent and becoming quiet. The thinking mind is sure to follow. These are the words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo.